Good evening, everyone. Let's start with a very simple but very interesting and very powerful idea. Our life is not just about what happens to us. In fact, more so, our life is about how we look at what happens to us. And that's the power of perspective. You must have heard of story of Thomas Edison. When he was a school kid, one day he came back home from his school and a note was written by his teacher for his mother. And the note said that unfortunately your son is a slow learner and our institute and our university will not be able to accommodate him. And the mother read out that note aloud to her son. And she said, it's written that you are a genius. And it will be very difficult for the university to accommodate the scale of a genius that you are. And that's why from today onwards, I will be your teacher and I will teach you. Years later, Edison said that I am who I am today. It's all because of my mother. The positive perspective that she gave me. It was not his degrees, it was not his education, it was not his school, but a positive perspective of one human being that gave the entire world electric bulbs. Perspective is that powerful. And if we understand the power of it, it's very useful for us in solving many interesting real life situations. And let me share a very interesting example because I'm very sure that all of you must have spoken about it, talked about it at some point in time. And that is gap in industry and academia. We are talking about two entities. The mandates of the two entities are different. The inputs are different, the processes are different, the output that is expected to be produced is also different. And that's why the gap is inevitable. But many times the gap is envisaged as a vertical gap. And then if it is getting governed by the force of gravity, sometimes we think that one is above and the other one is below. And then the academicians, they will say that we generate knowledge, so obviously we are above. And then training is only a subset of education, and that's why industry people are below us. Industry people will say that we are very real, very pragmatic, and that's why we are sitting right at the top. And academicians are far away from reality, so they are sitting below. Now let's make a small change. If we can rotate this vertical lab by 90 degrees so that it becomes a horizontal gap, governed equally by the force of gravity. And now if the two partners can understand that they can come forward and complement each other, shake hands. How? This is what Gavaskar used to say. If the batsman is not playing well, give him some more time and he will get back in the form. Because after all, class is permanent and form is temporary. In education, knowledge is permanent and skill sets are transient. Academicians can build knowledge base and industry experts, they can enhance and embellish the skill sets. Isn't it a wonderful handshake? And that can create a win-win situation, which then can be converted into a win-win-win situation with the third win for the stakeholders from both the sides. The real question is how to build our own sweet, powerful, original perspective. And in my opinion, the vehicle which is really powerful that will help us build our own perspective is research. And research helps us get rid of any and every kind of shackle. How? There is a very interesting story. This story is penned down by Plato a great Greek philosopher, and he has written this story in his book called as The Republican. This story is about two friends traveling in a desert. Out of these two friends, one is a blind person. Unfortunately, he cannot see. And the other friend is a normal person just like you and me. And while traveling and walking in a desert, that normal person says, "Oh, for a cup of milk." See, if you feel thirsty, one should not drink water, otherwise you will feel even more thirsty. In desert, that's why they prefer to drink and consume milk. And the blind friend poses a question. He says, "My friend, you are saying, oh, for a cup of milk. Now, cup I know, I have sensed it, I have touched it. But can you please help me understand, what do you mean by milk?" And the normal fellow says, "Oh, it's very simple. Don't worry, I will explain it to you." So he answers back saying that milk is a kind of white liquid. And the blind friend again poses a question. He says, "Liquid I know, I have sensed it, I have touched it. But can you please help me understand, what do you mean by white? The only color I know since my birth is unfortunately black." And this normal friend says, "Oh, it's very simple. Don't worry, I will explain it to you." And so he answers back saying that white is the color of swan's feathers. So see, instead of simplifying the things, he has started complicating it. Maybe he was a professor like me in one of the universities. But good professors and good students, they always believe in simplifying the matters. But he says, white is the color of swan's feathers. And the blind friend again poses a question. He says, "Feathers I know, I have sensed it, I have touched it. But can you please help me understand, what do you mean by a swan?" And now this friend realizes that this is not as simple as he would have thought of. There is a question coming back at him for every possible explanation. So this time very carefully he thinks for a while, and then he answers back saying that swan is a bird with a crooked neck. And the blind friend again poses a question. He says, "Neck I know, even I have a neck. But what do you mean by crooked? My world is very simple and straightforward." And now this normal friend really gets irritated. So what he does is he stretches out hand of his blind friend. And he says, "This is what I mean by straight. Tell me, do you understand?" And the blind friend says, "Yes." He then bends that hand in between and says, "This is what I mean by crooked. Tell me, do you understand?" And the blind friend very calmly says that, "Oh, now I understand what you meant by milk." So just see from where they started and where they ended. The story is very interesting, but what we can derive out of this story is even more interesting. So what can we derive out of this story? Don't walk in desert. Or if you're walking in desert, don't have a crazy blind friend by your side who is pestering you with all crazy questions. Not really. That's just on a lighter vein. What we can really derive out of this story is many times many of us are as blinded as the normal fellow in this story. Sometimes with our preconceived notions, sometimes with our own sweet biases. At times we tend to ignore certain things. At times we tend to neglect certain things. And research is one vehicle, one platform, one opportunity wherein we can get rid of any and every kind of shackle. And especially in today's era wherein we are talking about Industry 4.0. We are moving towards Industry 5.0. We are talking about machines getting more and more intelligent. We are in the era of generative AI. We are in the era where adaptability and agility is the key to remain in the game. And that's where research and the perspective that we gain out of research is extremely important. But to be very honest with you, sometimes I feel that somewhere we have missed the bus. We have lost this art of asking very interesting, searching questions. And I want my audience to be with me, so I will share one teaser with all of you. And then you think and tell me whether you agree with me or not. This is not even a concrete example, just a teaser. The moment we get up, we want to understand what day and what date it is. And don't you think that the calendar that we follow is a crazy, crazy system, logically illogical system. In the second month of our calendar, which is February, suddenly we stumble upon with odd number of days, sometimes 28, if we are in leap year 29. And is it not really strange? I work in the field of machine learning, and we write algorithms which are iterative. And we say iteration after iteration, the algorithm marches on towards optimum solution. So there is this popular saying in English, they say march on towards your solution. They also sing marching songs in army. They never say January on, do they? So let's play a game. Let March be the new month of our calendar system, and March is the first month, and then April, and then May, and it continues. And as we are in the 7th month, do you know what is 7 in Sanskrit? It is Sapta, and that leads us to September. And 8 is Ashta, leading us to October. And 9 is Navam, leading us to November. And 10 is Dasham, leading us to December. And now it's okay to have odd number of days in February, because now February becomes the 12th and the last month. So it's okay now to do the adjustment in the last month. But not just bunch of us in this room, but the entire universe, the entire globe follows this logically illogical system. Somewhere we have lost this art of asking very interesting questions. If we bring back that art, if we start thinking, and if we get into this habit of asking searching questions, then that leads us to research. Research is a very special feeling, and it's a wonderful vehicle that gives us a very different original perspective. And are we asking for too much? We all are born original. We all are different. We all are unique. We have unique fingerprints. We have unique faces. We have unique gait. We have unique keystroke dynamics. There are so many biometric identifiers that we carry on our body. And to be very honest with you, unfortunately, after the introduction of Macaulay's Minute in 1835, the education in our country has started putting a lot of emphasis on memorization. To be very honest with you, our legacy was very different, wherein we had Gurukul system, and it was a continuous dialogue between Guru and the disciple. That's why most of our scriptures, they are in the form of dialogue. Bhagavad Gita is a dialogue between Krishna and Arjun. And because many beautiful questions were raised by Arjun, even more beautiful and more profound answers were given by Lord Krishna. Ashtavakra Gita is a dialogue between King Janak and sage Ashtavakra. There is a beautiful dialogue between Uddalak Aruni and Shvetaketu in Chandogya Upanishad. And that's because at the heart and core of all of this was curiosity and inquisitiveness, jidnyasa. Everything was driven by that. The first sutra in Brahma Sutra is Athato Brahma Jidnyasa. The first karika in Sankhya Karika is Dukkhatraya Vigata Tadabhighatake Hetau Jidnyasa. So Jidnyasa and curiosity was the driving force. It's extremely important, in my opinion, to bring back curiosity. We should allow students to ask interesting questions. In research, no question is a stupid question, and no inquiry is stupid inquiry. In fact, if you look at all the inventions and discoveries, they are apparent accidents. They happen by serendipity, and all such accidents are bound to happen once you start walking the path. And for walking the path, it's important to see the path. If you really want to see your path, it's important to have your own original perspective. That's what is going to give us differentiating characteristics. And there is a very interesting concept. It's called as blue cow. If you are driving a vehicle on highway And if you see normal cows, probably they will not get noticed. But if you see a blue cow, because it's different, it will get noticed. Probably you will stop, you will click few pictures, and it will be remembered. This is true for all of us. If you really want to get stand out, if you really want to get remembered, differentiating characteristics is extremely important. And to be able to come out of the conventional shackles, there is no better vehicle than research. It's because of research so many interesting inventions and discoveries were found around us. How about X-rays? It was accidentally discovered in the laboratory of Röntgen. And see the honesty of the scientist. He could have very easily said that the rays are discovered in my lab, so they should be named after me. But he was so honest, he said, I don't know the nature of these rays. And in mathematics, for an unknown, the variable that we use is x. So he said, let's call them some rays X-rays. And even today, we know these rays as X-rays. And that has transformed the medical imaging fraternity completely. How about a messy dish that was not ignored by the great Alexander Fleming, and that gave us penicillin? How about a lazy but brilliant student who was trying to avoid writing the end sem examination, and in this endeavor he was able to outperform his own professor? I'm talking about Huffman, who was able to discover Huffman codes, and they were much more efficient than earlier Shannon-Fano codes, and he was able to outperform his own professor, Dr. Shannon. Crazy things happen because of wilderness, and the discoveries are bound to happen, but one has to walk the path first. Research is a very powerful mechanism, and that gives us perspective. Because of the perspective, because of the drishtikon, we understand our life better. And our life also undergoes very interesting changes. It's because of the perspective, the falling apple was converted into gravity. It's because of the perspective, the messy dish was converted into a medicine. Failures were converted into inventions. That's the power of perspective, drishtikon. In this fast changing world, very often we think that it is the world that changes first. But do you know what really changes first? It's our perspective, drishtikon. Thank you so very much for your patient hearing. I really appreciate this. Thank you. Thanks a lot.